sitting. I don't know if my camera, wait, let me see.
Hi there, we're live. Welcome to Diamond World Building. We're in the midst of looking at Che's birds because today's topic is birds. So Che, show us your birds.
I got Lulu. She is
wow, that's a nice big cage.
Lilac-crowned Amazon.
Ooh, an Amazon. Oh, God.
Oops. And I'm just pet sitting her.
Oh.
I'm not actually. We're pet sitting.
Cool.
For a friend of mine's brother. Who Lulu was at his parents' house, and the parents were like, well, the mom was trying to take care of it, and they know nothing about parrots. And they're just like, we don't know what to do. And so it came down to kind of, I volunteered.
So tell us actually, as we're getting into this as a topic, tell us some of the things that you know that these folks didn't know that helps you take better care of a parrot than they do.
I don't know, like, okay, needs sunshine. So an actual unfiltered sunshine. So you usually need like an avian light, or they need like outdoor time as long as it's not cold. And they had Lulu kind of in like their daylight basement by a window, but I mean, this is Oregon and there was trees and it was cold. So, although I will say my avian light bulb burned out and we haven't been able to afford to order a new one yet because those things are like $25. But we're gonna get another light bulb soon.
So what it does is
it
provides a particular type of light that the bird needs.
It's a full spectrum. It's full spectrum with like UVA, UVB, and all the things because they need sunshine just like we do to
for vitamins and stuff.
Process.
I meant.
Yes, yeah. Especially birds need calcium because their bones are hollow and fragile, and so they need to keep that up. Lulu is just ignoring entirely the cuddle bone in her cage. Peepers is real good. He's been working on that thing for months now.
The cuddle bone?
Cuddle bone.
And what is that about?
It's for calcium. It's a concentration. So I feel so terrible because it's literally the bone out of a cuttlefish, and it's pure calcium. You can also do like like if you bake eggshells down in the oven, like if you wash out and bake eggshells and then grind them into powder. So you can get calcium powder as well. Sorts of things. A lot of people just because you can just get the cuddle bones and stick it in the cuddle bone holder and put it in their cage.
And they'll eat it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then for a lot of parrots are equatorial. So they like to go 12 hours sunshine, 12 hours nighttime. So I put them to bed at about the same time I get them up in the morning. Last night I spaced out and didn't put them to bed until 9. Usually I like to put them to bed about 8:30 so I can get them up at 8:30. So I had to wait until 9 to get them up this morning.
That's interesting. And this has to do with their moods and their health, I imagine.
Yeah. It's just so that they're getting the right amount of sleep and the right amount of daytime. Sunshine, right. So they're getting like hopefully 12 hours of sunshine.
What is that called? Circadian rhythms.
Yeah. And parrots very, very much need a flock, and you're taking a bird that is a flock creature out of the wild, away from it, what it would have constant companionship for its entire lifetime. And so if you're going to do that, you need to spend time with your birds. And it's good quality time is great if you have a job, you know, spend some real quality time with them. I have quantity, so I'm in here all the time. And they can see me and I'm doing my stuff. They don't really demand constant interaction. But it's good if you can do it. I've got, like, Lulu is still nervous of us. Peepers just likes to hang around on his cage and play stand all day. So he's not real, like, he's like, oh, I don't want to sit on your shoulder. I don't want to do that stuff. Leave me alone. I'm just going to sit here. Just make sure you're here, because when I leave the room, he screams. So, but people do, like, the terrible things that people do to parrots is leave them alone. People put them in, like, back rooms and just leave them alone, and they are intelligent enough to literally go insane. They develop OCD. They'll pluck their feathers. And then and kind of conquering that behavior, sometimes you can't. Sometimes, you know, and then those are the ones who people don't necessarily adopt either, because they're these plucked naked birds. So here's a good documentary, PBS Nature. It's called Parrot Confidential.
Okay.
And it's about parrot pets. And that's why, like, if you do get a bird, the best thing to do is get from a rescue, because there are, like, the pet trade is devastating their wild populations. Cat loss is devastating. Some are considered crop pests and killed. Some there is in Britain, there's a fairly hefty population of ringneck parrots that nobody quite 100% knows where they came from. And they are a crop pest. And there has been, like, I think they have culled the population of parrots before. And this was a very old thing I saw on YouTube. I'll try to fetch it up. Because I'm posting a ton of links on here. So I'll try to find that. The British wild ringneck parrots. Okay.
Yeah, and there are also parrots in San Francisco.
Yes. And these are often
escape pets.
Nine, I think this is the right one. Oh god, it's gonna pause it here. Okay, there we go. This might be the one. So there are wild populations in cities. Often that link doesn't work. Oh no, let me go see. Let me try that. I didn't click on it, redirecting you to PBS Nature.
Can we get that as a link after the
Yeah, let's do it afterwards. That sounds
okay.
like a plan. So I want to, Jay, I want to thank you for all of that. Let me give some of our other bird folks a chance to expound a bit. How about you, Tanya? Tell us about what you got going on there.
Okay. I don't like it when people clip my bird's wings. But the second conure, I have two conures. The first one I got, she's dead now, but she was a green-cheeked conure. Now the second one I have is a yellow-sided green-cheeked conure. That is a mutation that happens in captivity. So they have nice yellow chests and bright red bellies and chests. And everything else is green cheek color. There's lots of green on the back. The flight feathers are blue. The tail is red. When I got Rio, that's my first. That's the one I have here. He wasn't getting enough time, and I think his owner realized this, and he gave him away to me. He sold it to me. One of his tail feathers was really chewed on, so he was developing neurotic behavior. Ever since then, he has stopped that. And the other thing they did to keep him tame was, yes, Chip. This is the other one. Chip wants to be on my finger.
I don't. We don't have video for you.
I know. This computer doesn't have video. I usually use
That's not a problem. I just didn't know whether you were expecting to.
my tablet. No. I had to wait until Rio grew out his flight feathers. He was quite tame back then, and if I left the room, he'd color for me. Chip doesn't do that. Chip is very quiet, but if Rio bites him, he'll bite back. He has the people at the pet store didn't tell me that he had clipped wing feathers as well, flight feathers as well. So I have to wait until Chip grows out his flight feathers. He's quite dependent on me, and right now he will step up when I tell him to step up. But after Rio develops his wings, yes, that's Rio. Rio is making what I call imitation kissing noises. I go, and he makes he's imitating that. So if you hear, you're hearing him, obviously. Okay.
That's Rio who makes that sound?
Yeah, Rio. Yeah, he makes a couple of imitation kissing noises. But Chip is very quiet and very tame. But after Rio got his flight feathers, he's not very handsy. He doesn't like to step up. If he wants a petting, he will come for a petting, but he's still a little bit wary of my hand, which I find kind of weird because I did nothing but be helpful towards him when he had no flight feathers and he couldn't move anywhere. If he wanted to be picked up and put on the monitor, he would call. Well, right, and everything. He's probably copped an attitude because he was being a territorial meanie yesterday towards Chip. Right? Get off the monitor, you show off. Okay. But Chip is very tame. I'm assuming that once he gets his flight feathers, he might go the same. Yes, Rio. That's an imitation kissing noise right there. He might go the same way as Rio and get a little bit less handsy because when I got him, he wasn't too handsy to begin with. But right now, he's perching on my hand. So I'm trying to see if I can get him to be handsy before his flight feathers come back.
Yeah.
But he has no neuroses. He had a sister who was a yellow-sided conure as well, but she was female, and I didn't want babies. So I got the male one, who was just Chip is just a plain green chick. So he has a touch of red on his belly. And he has, the red tail, the clipped blue feathers, and mostly green everywhere else, and green on his cheeks. Like his name. But he's very friendly. He's very nice. Rio tends to be the territorial bastard because he was here first, I guess, right? So I should really get my my tablet working so you guys can see, because I feel like a pirate.
That's okay. If you're a writer, you can describe. It's cool.
Yeah. If you hear,
yeah, no problem.
So, hi everybody. Sorry.
Hi, Cliff.
I just wanted to say, and apologies if this was already said, birds are dinosaurs. Isn't that cool? When I grew up, birds were or dinosaurs were thought of as like large dead lizards, and slowly the connection from Archaeopteryx on up has been made, and now we have dinosaur feathers and amber and all this cool stuff, and it's just like, yay. And every time I look at a bird, I'm thinking, that's a dinosaur, which, you know, my 5-year-old self, which is never far from my current self, is just thrilled by this information, and I'm still excited about it. Okay, I'm done.
Have you seen, Cliff, have you seen there was a research team that was breeding up chicken embryos?
Yes.
And they turned off the gene that causes the beak to grow, which basically gave them what we think of anyway as a dinosaur-looking snout, as opposed to a beak, which was hugely interesting.
Yeah, I just wish they'd let them grow up and, like, you know, imagine the pecking order.
I don't remember if the research said that whether or not they had teeth. As well as the snout,
like viable. As, I mean, like if it could have lived or not.
Did something that made the thing completely unable to live in a natural environment.
Jurassic Park, though, they could move them there.
There we go.
Yeah, we could.
Jurassic Chicken Park. It's very far sighted.
Oh my god, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
There was some other research along those same lines where they took some chickens and they put like a tail on them, kind of like what would be the right weight and proportions for like a T-Rex, and they observed how they walked so they could get an idea of how the T-Rex walked. And they have videos. It's really fascinating.
That's cool.
So birds are cool. Yeah. We all agree.
And smart corvids, especially, right? So we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Like if people, I saw one article where someone said, if you really want to know what you know, a dinosaur, if the meteor hadn't struck, what like a dinosaur intelligence would have evolved into, just look at crows and ravens, and you know, right? That's a sentient dinosaur.
They can do several level logical puzzles, and you know, use tools to get things done, and
a delayed gratification also, I think, is important. It means they plan for the future.
Yeah.
And have a sense of that.
It's a more deliberate kind of planning than what you get from like squirrels. Who sort of randomly hide things, but they don't seem to have enough presence of mind to hide them where they can find them on a regular basis.
To be fair, I do the same thing.
Yeah, squirrels are sort of interesting because I
can't find. I put it in a place where it would be safe and I'd remember.
Yeah. Very human thing.
There was something, like, I saw this nature documentary all about squirrels, and it said something about like that their brains grow in the fall, so they can remember where they buried things, but they also bury much more. And that's also sort of part of their ecological niche, is that they're burying, you know, future trees. So it doesn't matter if they find it all ever.
Well, in fact, yeah, we're not going to get onto squirrels because that could take a really huge tangent. They sometimes what they'll do is they will bite the embryo end of the acorn off.
Yeah, they're kind of. Yeah.
But I think they are part of the tree's strategy for reproduction, forgetful squirrels.
Very likely.
Which incidentally is the name of my new band, Forgetful Squirrels.
That means that my reading glasses strategy for reproduction is my forgetfulness.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how you keep optometrists in business. It's part of their survival strategy.
Okay, so the way that birds express themselves communicatively is very different, says Che, and I think we all agree, from the way that mammals communicate. And I think that's an interesting little tidbit because we are very accustomed to the way that mammals express themselves.
It's a lot of facial expressions.
Facial expressions are a big thing for mammals. And obviously, our gestural and facial expressive languages are not quite the same, and that's why you have to study up on how dogs communicate and what eye contact means and stuff like that, because we've already remarked on the show that the way that one culture of humans interacts and what eye contact means for them is different depending on culture. So clearly that's going to be different. With birds, you're taking one step beyond that, right?
Yeah, birds don't have any sort of really like the facial muscles to make like what you think. The mouths don't move. The beak is a hard.
And I think when we animate them, since porks were mentioned in the sidebar, when we animate them, we tend to want to give them mammalian facial expressions, and certainly the porgs had that, right? Yeah. Even though they were, I know, based on puffins, they were sort of.
They look like flying guinea pigs.
Well, I mean, so they look basically they are mammalized puffins, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Given very expressive faces in the way of Star Wars critters. Yeah.
Yeah, they're to sell plush toys. Let's face it.
They're ridiculously cute, but I still think the doctor should have finished eating.
That part of it. But I think that in fact this is relevant to the question of communicative strategies and facial expression and what humans are used to and what they want to see when they are thinking about an expressive creature, right? But that doesn't mean that. I mean, there are tons of people who will tell you that cats are not expressive, but if you're a person who's lived with cats, you know that they are expressive because you know what their communicative strategies are, and you even understand what cat facial expressions are about, right? So,
ooh, bird.
Yeah, there's Lulu.
But so I want to ask the bird people, and in fact, Kimberly, I didn't give you a chance to talk about your birds, but maybe we could do that in a second after we get through this topic. Like people to talk about what kinds of things birds communicate and how. Obviously, he screams when I leave the room. That got mentioned.
Well, we just had an interesting incident with the parakeets. So all three of our parakeets are from different original flocks, right? So they're not quite as bonded as they would be if they grew up together. And we went out of town and left them in their aviary. And when we came back, they had upended every single food dish onto the floor of the aviary because they decided that whatever was in the bottom of the food dish must have been better than what was in the top of the food dish. And when we went to retrieve them from the aviary, one of the birds, and normally what happens is at night we put food in their sleeping cage and we bring them in. And, they all come in for the food because they're a little bit hungry. But one of the birds was insisting, and I agree that I'm anthropomorphizing here a bit, but she would fly up to the cage to the other birds, and then she would fly down to where the food was on the floor and would eat some of the food and pick up some of the food. And then she would fly back up to where the other birds were in the sleeping cage. And she did this repeatedly. And she basically refused to come in. I mean, the communication appeared to simply be, why are you going in there? There's food here, right? Because that's normally our lure. And of the three birds, she's probably the most, what I would consider self-aware. She's the one who actively engages with us in a way the other birds do not. But it was a very interesting, I think, example of her clearly trying to communicate something, and of course the other birds were like, dude, this food's better. But it was an interesting moment because I had not been aware up until that point that this level of communication or this type of attempt would go on. I'm used to seeing parakeets in very large flocks where they're all kind of arguing constantly. So
I I had a stray thought that I wanted to bring up real quick. I taped it in the sidebar, but the interesting thing about this bird communication that we're talking about is that in fiction, when creating secondary worlds, if you want to give your people a very alien type of feel, having them communicate like birds would probably go a very long way, because they would be very, very alien.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, though, that humans in general, I mean, most of the species we interact with regularly do not have the ability to communicate facially. I mean, dogs, depending on the breed of dog, are kind of an exception. But you think about horses, you think about cows, you think about goats, you think about birds. Most of our domesticated animals learn to read our facial expressions if we're in close contact all the time, and we learn to read their body language.
Although
so
their
I think
eyes
if
are still
you're
expressive.
sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think it depends on the species. I mean, you can get like for a horse, you can get some expression with regards to the width of the eye, depending on the scenario. There's a lot of body language that goes with it, but you know, they don't make googly eyes at you the way that a dog would, right? That kind of thing. Dogs are the masters, I think, of
the guilty
suckering us in.
Yes,
The
yes.
puppy
Right.
dog
They've
eye.
got
It's
all
an
that
evolutionary
down.
strategy. They get fed that way. But we've also learned
It
to
is.
watch their tails, like what dogs do with tails, what cats do with tails, which are
Right.
different. We've
Right.
learned to interpret that.
So I think as a strategy for introducing an alien species, I think, you know, if you've got humans with a species that communicates differently in a way that we can pick up on, I think if they're communicating through smell, we'd probably have a big problem. But if we, you know, over time, I think those things are going to grow closer together, right? Your big conflicts are going to be at the outset, at the introductions, when people don't understand that, you know, if you're standing with your left shoulder forward, it means that you want to engage in conversation. But if your right shoulder is forward, then that means that you're in a really bad mood and everybody should piss off. You know, I think over time, you're going to have people who are masters of that, right?
So again, not birds, but just to follow up on that thought very quickly. Karen Joy Fowler, who wrote science fiction and now writes mainstream, her We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves does a great job of telling you the differences between chimp and human communication and how those miscommunications happen and how the same gestures are interpreted differently. And it's just smoothly integrated into the narration. It's just wonderful.
So doing that with birds would be very cool.
Yes,
too.
it's a good example of how to write an alien species based on a terrestrial species, because they're the same in this book. It's mainstream. But if you're working on birds, you know, you could look at that book as a text for how to write the alienness of the community.
So I'm going to pick up some things from the chat bar. Che says if a parrot is content, they will grind their beaks. Now, beaks do continue to grow. Am I right about that?
Certain parts of the beak, not everything. Yeah. Like if you cut beyond a certain point, the beak won't grow back. So certain parts of it continues to grow, and they grind it down. I called it grinding rocks or something like that. But yeah. It's happy. If they're fluffing and they're preening near you, that means they feel safe. That's another one. But yeah.
They also like to do the head cuddling thing, right? They come up and nuzzle you with their heads. That's
the
kind
what? Oh yeah. That's allopreening. I don't really do much. I haven't really done much.
Mutual preening?
Yeah.
I think that if I remember right, that's the lovebirds and the kunurs are really prone to that in the way that like the parakeets and stuff like that, the Amazon grays aren't. Am I correct? Is anybody more birdie?
I had a lovebird and he never did that, but he would to show his affection, he would like regurgitate from his crop and then like eat it again. But so it was like this offering of food. And So that's sort of another thing. Like if you have birds, you have this entity that is sexually mature, whose sexual needs you can't meet, but are sort of substitute mate for anyway. So you have to find like distractions for them when they start getting amorous. Oh God. Okay, and this is okay. Funny story is, when I called the vet about this behavior in Igor, and I showed them like a little video on my phone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's mating behavior. Don't sexually stimulate him." And I'm on the phone, and so I actually had to ask, "How do you sexually stimulate a parrot?" And then they told me, and it's like, basically, you don't want to pet your parrot anywhere below like the head, right?
Yeah.
If you stroke their back or pet under their wings or rub their belly or something, you're initiating mating. So, but I mean, just the fact that like on the phone I had to ask the vet, how do you sexually stimulate a parrot? It's like one of my favorite stories. Oh my God, yeah. So
talk about miscommunication with your parrots, right?
That is, and people will like, and then like you have to be careful because they'll masturbate on stuff.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like anything, things that are fuzzy and stuff. Like I had to take Igor's corner cozy out of his cage because he was humping his corner cozy, which is this little corner fluffy thing that they can snuggle up to at night, right? So, and then so like you just sort of watch for that and sort of discourage the behavior and see if you can distract them onto like, oh, try to chew some paper or go eat some food or like throw a treat at them. They're like easily bribable with food.
I have a dumb question. Why is it bad for your bird to be releasing sexual tension?
Okay, there's a whole thing on that. I'm not 100%. It's because it's not necessarily a release for them, because what they really want is another bird, obviously. Okay. So it's like it goes through, like they have like mating seasons, but like I think part of the problem with like mating seasonal like these behaviors is their aggression level will rise. They'll become more territorial. They're more difficult to deal with. So some of it you just have to like live through I think once or twice a year. And you just sort of have to know and watch out for it.
Leave the bird alone during ponfar. Okay.
They can also.
I was thinking that, yeah.
If they seriously see you as a mate, they can become aggressive toward, like, if you're married or in a relationship and the bird's attached to you, it will become highly aggressive towards your mate because it sees them as a threat and a rival. And so that's also something you want to be careful of, because, if they're, especially like, I mean, if you've got something big, like a macaw or something, they can do real damage to your face.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking what macaw personals ads would look like.
So it's sort of it's some of these are like is kind of discouraging the attachment to you as a human, and also keeping the bird busy and their brain engaged on other things. So it's
I mean, keeping them from being bored is I think is paramount, really, to keeping them healthy. And I mean, even
Some parrots are perch potatoes.
That is true. That's true. That's true.
That's true. Well, yeah, but there's a difference between being a perch potato and being disengaged. You know, I mean, just because they're sitting still and not terribly active doesn't mean they're not watching and listening and there's stuff going on in their heads.
Right.
So it's like we just put a Christmas tree branch in with the parakeets, and they have spent the past week plucking every single needle. It's possibly the best toy I have ever given them, because every day they fly down there and they're just plucking the needles off these branches. And we have three female parakeets, and you're not really supposed to put females together in large groups without a male. But this keeps them from going after each other, all the time, in a way that we're hoping will let them live together in relative harmony.
So you gave them a Christmas tree branch? Is that what you're saying? Okay, cool.
And they're just happily pulling all the needles off one by one by one. They started at one end of the branch and they're slowly working their way down.
Well, it's better than what Tanya has to deal with, which is the birds dismantling her keyboard.
Oh my God! Yeah, Igor loved that.
Yeah. You see, I buy toys. Cat Rambo has given me a thank you package and there's a couple of bird toys in there. When I get them, they give me a toy that they had at the previous place. I have like 5 to 6 toys, and I have the hugest cage. You know what Rio plays with? My spoon. He will play. You will hear him playing with the spoon in the bowl, and he throws it off the edge of the desk. My phone. I'm trying to Facebook chat with Wendy. He flips the phone over onto its side, so I can't see what's going on. Yes, now he starts to talk.
What else? Talking about you, right?
I had to get a keyboard cover so that he will, because I use the keyboard so much. It's because something I use. He brings food onto the keyboard. He will play with the keyboard, and then when he realized it could be dismantled, that was the worst. I woke up from a nap one day, and my Microsoft Surface, I just got the last possible keyboard I can get for it, and he had learned that was a keyboard too. I suppose he identifies numbers on it or something, or symbols on it.
Yeah.
And he realized that that's a keyboard too. It was gone. After that, I got a keyboard cover. I don't mind because the Surface is considered a tablet anyway.
Yeah.
He plays with the spoon. He plays with the pen, the remote, the mug, the phone. Myself.
Play with the things you intend them to play with either.
The kids like the boxes the toys came in.
Yeah.
I will get a cup of coffee. I will get a cup of coffee, and I will give him the cover of the cup, and he will go bang 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 bang, and then throw it over the edge.
Out of curiosity about sort of genre world building, have we taken birds into space yet, and what happens to them?
We have taken birds into space.
We have?
We have.
Did they go insane? Did they go insane?
They were checking. I think the research, and this is a while ago. This was early International Space Station. I think they were sparrows that they took up. And they were looking to see how they would fly in zero gravity, to see how they would orient themselves. But I don't remember the results. I think the results were the birds took one look at zero gravity and said, screw this, we're staying on the perch.
Yeah.
But I do remember running across some research because I was looking at something for transporting birds to Mars. Pigeons. Here it is. Pigeons in space. Hang on, I'll put the link up.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
But
it
they
occurs
have
to me
they
that
have they also took
a sentient bird species in a science fiction story trying to navigate microgravity would be really interesting.
Oh God.
Well, honestly, if you had prehensile feet in zero gravity, that'd be super useful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
There have been
Especially-
some science fiction stories about that, where genetically engineered humans had prehensile feet. For
but I mean,
purpose.
especially if you were genetically predisposed to sleep while clinging.
Well,
Yeah.
parrots use their feet for hands, and I hadn't had a parrot. Lulu's the only one who's really kind of been big enough to do this, where she holds food in her foot and eats from it. And they also use their beak and their tongue, specifically parrots. Their tongue is almost like another thumb.
Yeah.
So they can, they climb amazingly well with beak and feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's their specific feet are meant for really, really climbing, because their parrots are the only birds that have 2 toes facing forward and 2 toes facing backwards.
Yeah. Where did the
so they
fifth
have-
toe
they have-
go? Where did toe number 5? Where did toe number 5 go? Is what I want to know.
No one knows.
Well,
No,
honestly, I mean, cats only have 4 toes in back and 5 in front, which, unless they're polydactyl, which totally changes the game. But,
Oh, wow.
All right, so Kimberly's got the link for this video. I'm going to put it in the report later.
Oh, damn it.
It's in zero. They took them up for 0G. So what apparently happens is birds require gravity to swallow. So they can't take them into space for an extended period. But they took them up in the Vomit Comet and had them fly around. I think it's the same group that was taking cats up there to see if cats could right themselves in 0G. That is not an experiment I would have wanted to be a part of.
So could they write themselves in 0G?
Nope. They have the same problem.
I'm
Do
gonna
they
say
take
they
buttered
would just
toast as
say it.
well?
I think they would just, oh my God, yes, that commercial's the greatest thing ever.
Okay. All right, then. Birds need gravity to swallow. There's an interesting little tidbit that has come
I
out
didn't
of this.
realize that.
Yeah, I did not know
I
that
didn't
either.
realize it either.
Me neither,
That's-
but I've never taken a bird out of a gravity well.
Yeah, right. I know. It's
That's
yeah.
fascinating.
Talk about being really specifically terrestrial.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to change gears a little bit here. This has been really interesting and has gone in a lot of directions that I was not expecting, and that's awesome. We haven't spoken about, okay, so there are a couple things. I'm actually starting to think that maybe what we should do is get to all the different varieties of birds in another hangout, because I know Brian Dalton is a birder, and so he's going to have lots of opinions about the different kinds of species of birds and their variation. I think that would actually be a really cool thing to come back to later and see if we could include him in that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a look at the cultural significance of birds for a little while. Because human interactions with birds, I think, are very interesting. So far, we've been talking a lot about pets, but we also have hunting birds, where birds are in interaction with humans in order to hunt. And,
Yeah, there's a whole Darkover
Yes,
book
they
about
do
it.
shed. Oh, really? Emus?
Yeah.
Wow.
emus shed when they get stressed.
They do
Yeah.
massively. It's really odd. Like you can follow them. You can follow where they've been traveling by the amount of feathers that they drop when they get really stressed out.
Like, is that a thing where it's like, I'm scared I'm going to drop feathers? Or is that a thing like, my lifestyle is just too much for me and I'm dropping feathers all the time?
Well, they're just fabulous.
The punk rocky
but
music.
like, do you
Any
do
kind of
thing where, or do you mean is this like a stress reaction, like a fight or flight reaction, or is it a general circumstances of life are full of stress and therefore I shed lots of feathers kind of thing?
it's a fight. The times I've observed it, it's been in a fight or flight scenario, or what would trigger a fight or flight scenario. So I worked at a vet hospital for a while in radiology, and we would have to bring in emus to x-ray them every so often. And like the floor would be awash in feathers because emus don't like to be x-rayed. So, and you can't trank birds the way you can trank a horse or a tiger to do these kinds of x-rays. You have to get like 6 people on them and then pull the people apart just enough to get the x-ray in there to get the shot that you need. So I can definitely see how the emus are not happy.
Oh yeah,
when they're
being wrestled down.
Exactly.
But I mean, they're very large, strong birds.
They're very strong. Yeah.
Wow.
That they're.
All right, but back to raptors.
Go up and look up the emu war. That was an actual thing. Where Australia tried to let people just basically take out emus with guns because there was an overpopulation of emus at one point and they were causing a lot of trouble. The emus won.
That was actually a military exercise, and they tried to use military weapons, and they used high-powered and high-speed artillery gunfire on them, and emus are fast, and the emus won.
Yeah,
this is why Australia.
Anyone who's seen a Roadrunner cartoon, this is not surprising.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you pull out the Acme weapons on the emus, they're just not going to work.
Yeah. And I mean, I can see how they're hard creatures to hit. I mean, we have bird shot for a reason, right? Because birds are very, very hard to hunt, right? You don't use a single bullet situation for most birds, right? So basically telling the military, here, take your, AK-47 and go shoot you some emus is not going to end well.
That's actually kind of interesting for a fictional scenario because our weapons are designed to hit
our stuff
that we want, or mammals that we want to eat. But so bird shot is designed for birds because they move in a particular way.
Right.
This is interesting. So I'm also going to pick up from the chat bar here, and obviously we can't go into this as far as I'd like. Birds as portents, right?
Oh, yeah.
Bad or good luck associated with birds. Mythical birds. We're going to have to come back to this, you guys.
Well, you could do a divination one, because augury is its own word. Right?
Yeah.
Such a thing that we have a word for it.
Yeah,
I'm writing it down.
Something like it's if a sparrow comes in your house, it's good luck. Or somebody's gonna die. I don't remember which one. It's usually one of them.
And the raven in the poem of the same name.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ravens have long associations with things like death.
And the ballad
bodies on the fields.
Okay, so guess what? I am definitely going to plan Birds Part 2.
And then Birds Part 3!
Well, I mean, look, Birds Part 2 is going to be a thing, but I'm going to do it soon, not months from now, because this is something where there's so much more here, and I'm writing down these ideas. And I think that's excellent. And there's also, I will also point you to Sean and McGuire told a wildly, fabulously hilarious emu story.
I remember that one.
Yeah. She had a good emu story.
She had, was it her emu, wasn't it?
stories, and there's the lizard and the guy's leg story and all that.
Yeah, that's another one I love. Wasn't it? But it was Shannon's emu, if I remember correctly,
Yeah,
in that story. She actually had an
She
emu,
was fostering the emu. Yeah.
which she's a
Because it's
braver man than I am.
Well,
no, my daughter was.
This was something she was supposed to foster, but they were like, "Here, have it anyway."
No, I have a kid who's permanently traumatized about large birds from having been in Australia and subjected to, they let you hand feed emus, and that's just, it's one of the more terrifying things that I've made my poor children do. It's bad enough at my height, but
Oh yeah.
she was 3.5 and it was towering over her. But
oh my gosh,
Australia permanently changed my impression of large birds because it's all over large birds. And I remember being there, but within my first week and a half of being there, and I looked up in the sky and I thought, wow, look at all those sulfur-crusted cockatoos just flying around as if they were wild animals.
They are, I know.
From an American standpoint, that was, tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of bird up there, but not in Australia. So.
Well,
there was.
Like when I first went down to Australia, I didn't expect to find parrots there just flying around. Like, I don't know, I have, I guess, bird expectations from California, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But like corellas, and are like all over the place in enormous flocks. We had a situation where one of our party was trying to make a public phone call back to the United States, and there was this flock of corellas just hanging around, being incredibly loud, and her mom was like, what is that sound? Is that seagulls? And our friend's like, no, it's parrots. And the mom was like, what? So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more here. And we haven't talked about minor birds, and we haven't talked about lyrebirds.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
and the fact that there are birds with similar names in other countries where Americans hear the stories about now I can't remember what the name of the bird is in Australia that's just incredibly vicious and will swoop down on people, and there are these stories about children trying to put
the what?
Right. Magpies.
Oh, magpies.
Magpies in Australia are not these friendly little things that just like shiny things. They will actually dive bomb your head. And so there are legends of children who put like plastic ice cream buckets on their heads to try to protect their heads, and paint giant googly eyes and to try to scare the birds off. And so, North Americans generally tend to have a much more benign attitude about birds, and a lot of Aussies I know are just like, birds. Because
I have to tell you, I love take a lot of magpies make.
It doesn't take a lot of effort to realize that yes, this was a dinosaur, and also it's out to get me, and that whole Alfred Hitchcock experience is not very far from reality. There, people talk about other animals in Australia, about snakes and spiders, and honestly, the birds were much scarier.
Yeah.
There was.
We'll come back to this. Next week is Christmas week, and I have family in town, so we will not meet next week.
Okay.
But what that does is that means that today will be the last day that we meet at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Because I think I'm going to probably need to take the day off on the 2nd of January, because that's my first day at work. So what we're going to do is we're going to now have 2 weeks off. The next time that we will meet will be Tuesday, the 9th of January at 4 p.m. Pacific. And I'm going to try to be sane. Yeah. But anyway, so at that point, let's just do birds part 2. Okay, so January 9th.
We'll bracket the year end with birds.
Okay.
because that way I won't have to wonder what we're doing for the next topic. But I also have really fantastic news that our guest for January is going to be Ann Leckie.
Ooh.
And I'm really excited to have her on the show. And she is going to be here on, I believe it's January 23rd.
Sorry, who was that?
Ann Leckie.
Ooh.
So, yay, that will be really super exciting. And I'm really looking forward to talking with her. And then the other person, if I can think of it. Oh, yes. February, we're going to have Khalida on the show. Khalida Mahamadallah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Nice.
And
Otherwise known in Facebook as KF Vega or K from Vega.
yeah. Yeah. She is very cool. So anyway, things to look forward to. Let's definitely be in touch. And I'm so pleased we had so many people for this. And I will see you, hopefully. I'm going to cross my fingers that Brian Dalton is going to be able to find some time on January the 9th. But let's see how we go.
Maybe if it's later in the day, he can make it. Like,
it's possible. He
kind of like
his work
squeeze it in toward the end of work.
Up and down. So
yeah.
Anyway, for now, I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thank you all for being here. And thank you all for trying to help me make this transition to continuing the show while I'm working. So we'll see how we go. And I'm going to stop the broadcast.